You walk into a room and you instantly feel it. That tightening in your chest. That sudden hyper-awareness of your hands. Like you've never had hands before, and now you have no idea what to do with them. Your brain starts running at 100 miles an hour, analysing every face, every glance, every micro-expression, asking one question on loop. What are they thinking of me? And the worst part? You know it's irrational. You know logically that nobody's scrutinising you that closely. But knowing that does absolutely nothing to make it stop. That's social anxiety. And if that description hit a little too close, this video was made for you. Here's exactly what this video is going to give you. You're going to understand what social anxiety actually is at a neurological level, not the surface definition, the real mechanics. You're going to find out why the most common advice, just push through it or fake it till you make it, not only doesn't work, but often makes things worse. And you're going to walk away with a framework that actually shifts the experience, grounded in clinical psychology, and the real stories of people who have been at the worst end of this. There's also something coming up later that reframes social anxiety in a way most people have never considered. A perspective that doesn't just make it more manageable, it makes it make sense. In a way that might actually change how you feel about yourself for having it. Stay with this. That part alone is worth it. Let's clear something up first. Social anxiety is not shyness. It's not introversion. It's not just being a bit nervous around people. Those things are personality traits. Social anxiety is a threat response, and that distinction matters enormously, because the way you treat a personality trait and the way you treat a threat response are completely different. Here's what's actually happening in your brain when social anxiety fires. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, has flagged a social situation as dangerous, not uncomfortable, dangerous, as in same category as a physical threat. Your nervous system activates accordingly. Heart rate increases, cortisol and adrenaline flood the body, attention narrows, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thought, perspective taking and calm decision making, gets partially offline, and then you're expected to make small talk. This is why it feels so impossible in the moment. Your brain is in survival mode, and you're trying to have a normal conversation. You're not being dramatic, you're not being weak. You are genuinely fighting your own nervous system while trying to appear completely fine. Now here's the part that most people don't know. The specific threat the amygdala is responding to in social anxiety is social rejection. And from an evolutionary standpoint, that makes complete sense. For most of human history, being rejected from the group wasn't just uncomfortable, it was a death sentence. Humans survived by belonging. Exile meant exposure to predators, starvation, isolation. The brain evolved to treat social rejection as a genuine survival threat, because for hundreds of thousands of years, it was. So your alarm system isn't broken, it's just running ancient software in a modern world. It's protecting you from a threat that no longer exists in the same form, but it doesn't know that. Neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman at UCLA ran studies showing that social rejection activates the same neural regions as physical pain. Not similar regions, the same ones. Your brain processes being left out or judged the same way it processes being hurt, which is why social anxiety doesn't feel like nervousness, it feels like danger. That's not weakness, that's neuroscience. But here's where it gets complicated, and this is the loop that keeps most people stuck. Social anxiety has a self-reinforcing mechanism built into it, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. It works like this. You anticipate a social situation, and your threat system activates. You feel the anxiety, the racing heart, the self-consciousness, the mental noise. So you either avoid the situation entirely, or you go but spend the whole time in your head, monitoring yourself, editing everything you say before you say it, and escaping as soon as possible. And then, this is the crucial part, your brain files that experience as evidence. If you avoided, I avoided it and I feel relief. Avoidance works. The brain learns avoidance equals safety. The next threshold for anxiety gets lower, the world gets smaller. If you went but white-knuckled through it, that was awful. I was so anxious the whole time, I probably came across terrible. The brain logs, social situations are dangerous and painful. Next time, the alarm fires earlier and louder. Either way, the anxiety wins. Either way, the pattern deepens. This is called the avoidance reinforcement cycle, and it's the central engine of social anxiety disorder. Every clinical treatment model, cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, exposure response prevention, targets this cycle specifically, because the behaviour that feels like self-protection is actually the thing feeding the problem. Here's the blunt truth. Every time you avoid, you're telling your brain the threat was real, and your brain believes you. Now, this doesn't mean the solution is to force yourself into terrifying situations and white-knuckle through them. That's the just push through it advice, and it backfires badly for most people. Flooding yourself with a threat your nervous system isn't ready for doesn't build confidence, it builds trauma. The solution is more nuanced than that, and it involves understanding something about what social anxiety is actually protecting. Here's the reframe that changes everything. Social anxiety, at its core, is almost rooted in one thing: caring deeply about connection, combined with a deep fear of not being enough to deserve it. It's not arrogance, the assumption that everyone's watching you. It's actually quite the opposite. It's a profound sensitivity to belonging, combined with the belief, often subconscious, often formed very early, that the real you, seen clearly, wouldn't be accepted. Think about that for a second. The person with social anxiety isn't self-absorbed. They are someone who cares so much about genuine connection that the fear of losing it through rejection, through judgment, through being seen as inadequate, activates their threat system before the connection even has a chance to form. That's not a character flaw, that's a wound. Emma Stone, one of the most recognised actresses in the world, has spoken openly about debilitating social anxiety in her early life. Not mild shyness, panic attacks, an ability to go to friends' houses, a hypervigilance around social situations that controlled her daily life. She has described using acting as a way to work through it, not because performing in front of millions is easier, but because the character gave her a layer of distance from the fear. What's significant about her account isn't the success story, it's what she describes underneath the anxiety: a deep desire to connect, and a terror that being fully seen would result in rejection. The anxiety wasn't the enemy of connection, it was the desperate, misfiring attempt to protect the possibility of it. Barbra Streisand, an artist at the absolute peak of her craft, famously avoided live performances for nearly 3 decades because of stage fright rooted in social anxiety. 3 decades. One of the most talented performers in history, sidelined not by lack of ability, but by a nervous system that had decided exposure was too dangerous. These aren't cautionary tales, they are evidence that social anxiety has no relationship whatsoever to your actual capability, your worth, or how much people would value you if they got to know you. It's a misfiring alarm, nothing more. But then how do you reset it? The framework that clinical psychology has consistently found most effective for social anxiety is built on 3 pillars. Not steps, pillars, because they work together, not in sequence. Pillar 1, gradual exposure, but done right. Exposure therapy is the gold standard for anxiety disorders, but it's badly misunderstood in popular culture. It's not about throwing yourself in the deep end, it's about building a hierarchy, a ladder of situations, from mildly uncomfortable at the bottom to most feared at the top, and deliberately, systematically moving up it. The key word is deliberately. You're not waiting until you feel ready, you're choosing to approach discomfort at a level your nervous system can tolerate, staying in the situation long enough for the anxiety to peak and naturally begin to decline, which it always does, and building the experimental evidence that you can survive it. Every successful exposure teaches your amygdala something it desperately needs to learn. This situation is not actually dangerous, not because you told it, but because you showed it. Start small, genuinely small. Make eye contact with a stranger. Say good morning to someone at a till. Ask a question in a small meeting. These aren't trivial, every one of them is a rep, and reps build tolerance. Pillar 2, shifting the focus of attention. One of the most consistent findings in social anxiety research is that sufferers direct a disproportionate amount of attention inward during social situations. They are monitoring themselves, watching their own performance in real time, analysing their voice, their words, their expressions, trying to control how they're coming across. This internal monitoring has two devastating effects. First, it consumes the cognitive resources you need to actually engage with the conversation, so you come across as more stilted and disconnected, which confirms the fear. Second, it removes you from the actual experience, which means you never get to collect the evidence that things went okay. The intervention here, documented extensively in the work of a psychologist, Adrian Wells, is called attentional training, the practice of deliberately redirecting attention outwards to the other person's words, their expression, the content of what's being said, not to fix your own performance, to genuinely engage. This sounds simple. In practice, it requires real repetition, but the shift it creates is significant. When you're genuinely focused outward, the self-monitoring quiets. Not all at once, but it quiets. And genuine engagement produces genuine responses, which feel more natural, which reduces anxiety, which allows more engagement. The opposite spiral from the one you're used to. Pillar 3. Changing the relationship with the thoughts, not the thoughts themselves. This is where acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, offers something that CBT alone sometimes misses. The standard cognitive approach says, identify the anxious thought, challenge it, replace it with a more rational one, and that works to a degree. But for social anxiety specifically, the act of challenging thoughts in real time during a social situation often increases the internal focus, which makes things worse. ACT offers a different angle. Instead of fighting the thought, instead of trying to convince yourself that anxiety is irrational, you simply notice it. There's the thought that they think I'm boring, not I am boring, not that's irrational, just there's that thought. I see it, and I'm going to engage with the conversation anyway. The clinical term is diffusion, creating distance between you and the thought, so it becomes something you observe rather than something that you are. And the research on this is compelling. People who practice diffusion don't necessarily have fewer anxious thoughts, they just suffer from them less, and function better in spite of them. Dr. Russ Harris, one of the leading voices in ACT, describes it as holding your thoughts lightly, not believing them, not fighting them, just letting them exist without letting them drive. Here's the deepest truth in all of this. The goal was never to become someone who doesn't feel anxious in social situations. That's not a realistic destination, and chasing it creates a different kind of suffering. The belief that you're broken until you arrive at a place that doesn't exist. The actual goal is to become someone who can feel the anxiety and show up anyway, who can notice the alarm going off and choose not to obey it, who can be in a room, feel the discomfort, and stay present enough to connect despite it. That's not the absence of anxiety, that's freedom from its control. And here's what nobody tells you about freedom. When you stop trying to eliminate the anxiety and start moving through it instead, something unexpected happens. You start to discover what's on the other side of it. Genuine moments of connection, conversations that surprised you, situations you survived that you are certain you wouldn't, and your brain slowly, incrementally updates its threat assessment, not because you forced it, because you gave it new evidence. The people who have genuinely moved through social anxiety don't describe it as conquering a monster, they describe it more quietly than that, a gradual realization that the thing they were so afraid of, being seen, wasn't as catastrophic as the anxiety promised it would be, that people are mostly too preoccupied with their own fears to scrutinize yours. That connection, when it appears, is worth every uncomfortable moment that precedes it. That discovery is waiting for you on the other side of the next uncomfortable room you walk into. So here's where you actually are right now. You understand what's happening in your brain when social anxiety fires, and why it's not weakness, irrationality, or a personality flaw. You know why avoidance feels like relief but quietly makes everything worse. You have a real framework, exposure, attention redirection, diffusion. That clinical psychology has validated over decades of research. And you have the reframe, the one that matters most. That the anxiety isn't proof of your inadequacy, it's proof of how much you care about connection. That's not something to be ashamed of, that's something deeply human. Here's the thought to leave you with. Every person you admire who seems naturally confident in social situations, most of them aren't. They've just taken enough runs at the discomfort that the alarm doesn't stop them anymore. The confidence isn't absence of fear, it's a decision made again and again to move despite it. You don't need to become a different person. You just need to stay in the room a little longer than the anxiety tells you to. Start there. Everything else follows. If this describes something you've been living with, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to go deeper into psychology, anxiety, and confidence, be sure to check out my other videos.